Welcome to Standing on the Edge. This is your host, Randy Saplata. Today is Tuesday, March 17th, and today we're going to talk about Are We There Yet? On the edge of the coin. We also have the topic of the hardest thing to do during Think Like the Rich. And today's personal story will be You Can't Get Insurance During a Calamity. Finally, we'll finish off the show, as always, with What Would Happen If. By the way, if you like the content presented here and in other videos that I have, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, that like button, and of course, subscribe to the channel so that you can ensure that Facebook and YouTube keep me around for a while. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for the edge of the coin. And welcome back to the show. The Edge of the Coin is brought to you by the CS Media Group. We provide the outstanding talent and you get the extraordinary entertainment. The Edge of the Coin is a segment that shows us a way of opening up our mindsets to allow us to explore both sides of any situation. We're going to jump right into today's topic, which is, are we there yet? Now, this can be taken in several different ways. Of course, if you have kids or grandkids, then you know exactly where I might be going with this one here. But excuse me one second, let me move this computer screen down just a hair. And you know where I'm talking about. If you've had kids, you've been on a long road trip, and they're constantly, after about 2 to 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit less depending on their age, it's, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Because they're bored. They don't know what's going on. But if you put that into the situation that involves businesses or investing, it becomes quite a bit different. What do I mean by this? Well, the object here is understanding points in time, not destinations, okay? And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of times that you can go ahead and get to your mile markers, your milestones, and so on and so forth. But you can't stop there. If you stop, you're dead in the water. You won't be going any further. You can't grow, obviously. And it means that pretty much you are moving on to something else, something new, something, whatever the case may be. And so you really can't turn back at that point. All you can do is either try to go ahead and move forward or to change directions so you can go ahead and move on to something else. So the question, are we there yet right now today, is May 12th, I believe. Let me check my calendar. May 17th. I apologize. Today's May 17th. And right now, for the last couple of days in watching the news, I've been noticing that investors, and I use air quotes on that one, investors are pulling out of the stock market. Now, they're not actually pulling out of the stock market. A lot of them are just pulling out of a certain part of the stock market. The true investors are repositioning. They're the ones that are going, they're rubbing their hands and shaking their heads and going, yes, yes, oh, this is exciting. This is what we've been waiting on right now. Because this is where the rich people and the people that are smart enough and trying to go ahead and join those ranks, such as myself, are understanding that right now is the time where everything is moving from one sector to another sector. It's called following the money, okay? And it goes everywhere. So, I mean, if you happen to have a small business and you notice that the craze that came about of those little plastic bands, I forget what they called them back in, crazy bands, I think it was back in 05, 06, 07, something like that, which was a fad as usual. But all of a sudden it was an overnight craze and people were investing in them as super quickly. Excuse me. Sorry about that. They were investing in them in super quickly, and then all of a sudden, bam, they dropped out of sight. And you don't know what happened to them at all. Well, that's kind of what we're looking at this particular time. There's a lot of investors right now that know that there's some really serious troubles ahead. And so they're pulling out what they've got out of their accounts to do one of two things, either to hang on to it, which is not very smart, or to go ahead and reprogram it into another area to go ahead and utilize in that sector. And this is where we really want to go ahead and start focusing. And we'll be going ahead and talking about that in the next segment as well, most likely, or at least here and a very close date. But you want to go ahead and watch the stock markets, not just here in the United States, but of course that's the one that's going to be the big indicator, because it's going to drag down all of the rest of the markets all around the world. It doesn't necessarily mean that we started it, but we're going to be the ones dragging them down. So you want to go ahead and make sure that anything you've got that is kind of temporary or is the big talk of the day, that's where people are starting to go ahead and draw their investments from. Okay. So right now that's coming out of the tech sectors and of course the FANG stocks basically from there. And why is that? That's because the people that have been investing in these things have realized that there's a lot of other things on the horizon that are coming up that are going to need some serious attention. Or, and this is probably a lot of the case with most investors right now, is that other things have been really starting to compress and or to crash, and so they're having to sell off the good investments to pay off the bad ones so they don't lose any kind of money for that. So right now, I've been talking about this particular moment in time for about the last 2 to 2.5 years officially on the radio. But of course, I've been telling my kids and everybody else that I can go ahead and talk to as well that it's coming. And I've been doing that since around 2013, 2014, or even a little bit earlier than that, because I was expecting, like many investors as well, that obviously the older people get, the more they're going to want to be able to stay at that comfortable level, and of course to keep it as safe as possible, preserve their wealth as much as possible. And they're going to have to, by United States law and many other countries all around the world too, they have to start pulling their investments out once they have reached retirement age. And by law, they have to take a certain amount out of the stock market, out of the system, out of their accounts, and start exchanging them in for the currency of that particular country, so that the countries and the governments can tax that amount, because that's what they said they would do. That's how they promised their setup when it was started way back when. So everybody right now that's over the age of 68, and it might even be a little bit higher than that, but definitely over the age of 68, is starting to have to go ahead and pull out their money. Now, I was expecting it back in 2016 when the idea was that anybody the age of 65 was going to start going ahead and pulling this money out. The government's changed the rules slightly and moved it to 68, and I think even up farther from there. But regardless of the fact, people are getting older. They're not getting to a point where they want to continue investing all of their life savings. They want to go ahead and start living off of it and going from there. With that in mind, little by little, over the last 2 years, the Federal Reserve of the United States has gotten into the bond market, into the stock market, into many other markets as well, quietly, and have been floating the markets, so to speak, until they were ready for this reset that's coming up in January of next year. And so, that being the case, they're now finally starting to take money out of the system again. They call it quantitative easing or quantitative tightening, or so on and so forth. And the investors, again with air quotes, the ones that were not expecting this, because they expect the stock market only to go up for the most part, and only to go ahead and have this free money that's been happening over the course of the last 10 years, and that they would have it forever. Well, that's obviously not the case. And because of that, the stock market is going down. Now, I can't tell you officially how much it's gone down. I just know that over the last few days as I've been watching it, it's been dropping between 0.5% and 1% per day. And that, of course, right now is just watching the Dow Jones part of the New York Stock Exchange. The other exchanges are going down as well, but I haven't tracked them quite as much as well too. But if you think about it, if the stock markets are only dropping 1% per day, and that's a pretty huge drop, there's only 100 days that it can drop before it hits zero, which means that even if it goes 1% a day, that means that over the course of 1 month, it's dropped almost 1/3 of its value. And I can guarantee you that investors are not going to allow it to drop just little incrementally 1% per day, because it's like a falling weight. The farther it falls, the faster it goes in, I should say, in the water. Dropping a weight into the water, it's going to be kind of almost stopped by the surface of the water, and then it's going to go ahead and start slowly going down, and the faster it goes down and the more it covers water, and the faster it sinks down to the bottom. The exact same thing right there. So the investors are going to go, oh, wait, 1% down? All right, let's pull a little bit of money down. Wait, there's another percent down. All right, let's pull a little more money down. And then another 3% down. Okay, we have a trend going right now. We're going to pull out quite a bit. And then it goes boom, 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 boom. And the steps become bigger. The weight drops faster and the market crashes quicker as well. And so, are we there yet? Yes, I believe we are. I truly do. I don't think that the market is done crashing for sure. I don't think it's really started crashing, but we are definitely right there right now. It is starting in that downward trend, and it's only a matter of time. Why? Because the Federal Reserve, like I said, they're starting a brand new reset on the 1st of January. You can't reset something and really make it worthwhile without having some sort of tumble, crash, doing whatever, a demolition of some sort, to be able to rebuild on top of that. They've got to go ahead and demolish what's happening, the old system. They have to clean it up, and they have to go ahead and rebuild the new thing on top of that. Well, they've already got the superstructure, the plan's ready to go. Now what they have to do is to go ahead and kind of demolish what's left and then sweep up the pieces to be able to start over with a clean slate. I don't think this is going to work very well for the Federal Reserve. I really don't. And there's two reasons for this. First of all, because once we've crashed and burned, so to speak, then too many people are going to be very, very, very upset over the Federal Reserve having control over everybody's money. I don't think that's going to work out very well. So the people that are going to come and pick up the pieces are going to be the World Bank, the IMF, and the people in the World Economic Forum. They're going to be the ones taking over from there. And they're going to be reassuring, again in air quotes, reassuring the governments of the world that they will be able to do a better job because they've been able to watch the Federal Reserve, the central banks, over the course of the last century and see what's worked and what hasn't worked, and how they're going to go ahead and be able to take what they have right now and basically sweep it off the table and come up with this massively wonderful plan that's going to work out so much better than what has happened over the course of the last 100 years. Well, if you take a look back in history, this works. Yes, it does. And it works for about 100 years. And then it starts over again because what happened in the last century just doesn't work anymore. And this is constantly the case. Every single century, something brand new starts over. Sometimes it happens more than once a century in order to go ahead and do so. But the biggest thing is that once you got the ball rolling and moving and without your hitches or your bumps, or so to speak, then you can go ahead and continue on much easier, much better. This new system, here's my prediction. And yes, this is my personal prediction. This is not a prescient thing. It's not reading the future or anything like that. But that what's going to happen is that the governments are going to be persuaded the governments of the world, a lot of them are going to be persuaded to go ahead and move into this new centralized era. And they're not going to call it centralized because they're going to, they're going to say it's so much better for everybody. In other words, everybody's going to be happy because they don't own anything. The world banks are going to go ahead and control things and dole out the money and be able to be so beneficial to so many governments and so many different things and so on and so forth. And people are going to be like, yeah, let's do it. We're going to have a great time because we don't have to worry about spending money on anything. It's all going to be given to us. And we're not going to have to worry about whether or not we have something in particular because it's going to be lent to us if necessary. But here's the funny thing is that it's going to last generally around 3 to 3.5 years, is my opinion. Why? First off, because people are going to realize they're going to wake up after 3 to 3.5 years and go, wait a second, we were promised so much or led to believe that so much was going to be given to us. And now we've only got this tiny little thing where we were promised all this huge amount. And it's not going to be nearly what people thought it was going to be. And the government or the world banks and the people that are controlling everything are going to say, yes, but we're still in the working out phases. We're trying to make sure that things are going to be working out. So yes, we're keeping a lot of stuff set aside. And we're not able to go ahead and do this. And finally, after 3.5 years, the truth's going to come out and they're going to say, you know what? Okay, we're tired of your complaining. Here's what you did. You signed your rights away to us. We're going to take massive action, whether you like it or not, because we know what's best for you. That's how it's going to end after about 3 to 3.5 years. And then people are going to really start massively revolting. And at that point, it's going to be too late because they're going to say, you know what? You've signed your privileges away. You can't do anything about it. You are now in this situation. This is what you've been dealt. This is what we're telling you you need. And because you've gone ahead and tried to revolt against us, we're now taking away what little privileges that you did have away. And we're going to go ahead and give you just the barest subsistence to be able to live off of and move on from there. And the people that don't like it, they're going to get the least amount. The people that do like it, they're going to go ahead and get redistributed again to the newer amounts. And the people, of course, that are liking it or loving it or have been enjoying these amounts to begin with are going to receive more benefits. And so they're going to be going, yeah, let's keep up the track. Let's go ahead and make sure we step on everybody else. Well, guess what? Nobody's equal. Nobody's equal at all. And this has always been the case anyway. It's just a newer version of it, okay? I mean, we've had constantly people over the course of millennia that said, well, the rich are greedy. The rich don't know. The rich are not going to allow us to go ahead and do whatever it needs to get done. And therefore, we need to go ahead and bring down the rich and start over again. It's going to happen again like it has time immemorial. Are we there yet? Yes, we are right now at the beginning of the stages. The stage is set. The coaster has crested the top of the highest hill, and we are now starting to crash. That is what I believe is happening. So what do we do next after this? Well, let's go ahead and find out. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to think like the rich. And welcome back to the show. Think Like the Rich is brought to you by Mama's Decadence, offering luxurious, I love that word, luxurious refreshment for your body inside and out. You need to treat your body and that of your lover to a bit of luxury from Mama's. You can find out what's available by emailing Heather at Mama's Decadence, MOMMAS, Decadence, which is DECADENTS, Mama's Decadence at gmail.com. By the way, Mama's is hosting a sock drive at the moment to benefit the homeless people of Atlanta. New or unworn black or white socks are preferred. preferred. The homeless event's going to be on June 18th of this year, 2022. And if you need more information, you can either go ahead and telephone or text 470-554-2134 or send an email to Heather at mamasdecadence@gmail.com. Think Like the Rich is a segment designed to help everyone think past their circumstances and encourage a different course of action. Today's topic is the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do. Now, I mentioned this next phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, guess what? Once again, the rich are doing exactly like that. So I want you to think like the rich. Don't let a crisis go to waste. What do I mean by this? Well, as I said during the last segment, I've been watching the stock market, the New York Stock Exchange, and more specifically the Dow Jones part of it, that is now starting on its downward trend, and it has been generally reducing itself between 0.5% and a full percent each day since it started. Now, of course, there are little upticks here and there, but for the most part, it's on a downward trend. And again, like I said, it's not going to stay at the 0.5% or the 1% mark. I believe that sometime here in the next few days, maximum a week, if I'm correct, if I'm completely incorrect, it'll be no more than 6 months. But I definitely believe that we're starting right now where it's going to be, severely crashing here over the next week or so. And what's going to happen is that the investors that are out there are going, wait a second, why is this going down? The big people have already taken out their money. That means that only the little tiny investors who have just gotten into the market are the ones that are going, wait, they're getting out. But that means there's more to be able to buy. And I know I can go and keep it. And they're going to keep on moving their money in. They're going to push and push and push all in badly, which will not be good for them at all. And over the course of the next week, we're going to find that this 1% becomes 2%, becomes 4%, becomes 8%, becomes 16%, 32%, 64%, 128%, and bam. The people that just got in have been wiped out within a week or less. The major investors that have already pulled out their money have already put it into something else. What did they put it into? Basically, almost anything that they could see that was going to be able to perform up. But they haven't put 100% of their money into that. They're keeping some of that back to the side. Why? Because what I also mentioned during the last segment is this. The Federal Reserve of the United States is resetting next year the currency. They're going into a digital type dollar. Now, whether or not this actually works doesn't matter. What's happening is they're resetting this dollar. So if the people that have held or have put all of their money into something else that's performing right now, it's still based on the US dollar. And when the US dollar is broken, is swept aside, is moved into something else, it's going to be null and void, and everything that they had right there is going to once again crash as well. So we have more than one thing crashing. We have the stock market that's going down right now. The real estate market has already started its downward trend and has been for about the last 2 to 2.5 months. It's going to crash very quickly after the stock market does as well. I say quickly, again, in air quotes, it's going to be a relative thing because generally it's 3 months to 6 months behind what's going on. But it's going to crash too. In addition, the bond market's going to go ahead and crash. It's already started to tank, as we know about right now. The tech stocks are going to go down. Medical stocks are going to go down. Everything, because of the U.S. dollar and its reset, is going to get wiped out very quickly by the end of the year and have to be restarted. So the smart people have already pulled out their money and they've already started putting it into other performing assets that they know, even if they go down, they're not going to go down quite as much, or they're expecting to go ahead and go like seriously super high, super sky high. What are they investing it in? They're investing it into commodities. Commodities are always something that's going to never, ever, ever change. They're putting it into gold and silver. They're putting it into oil. Yes, oil, believe it or not. Even though the Biden administration is actively trying to go ahead and shut down the oil industry, this is never going to happen. It's never going to happen at all. So they're going to put it in, they're putting it into oil right now. They're putting it into copper. Copper is a super big thing that they're going into because it's absolutely needed for conductivity, for managing the wires, for structural strength of businesses as well. They're putting it into wheat. They're putting it into the byproducts of these different things, such as corn, soybeans, the oils that come from them as well, and so many different things. Commodities is the big hot topic right now, and that's going to go ahead and get super overblown, as it should as well. But that's where they're putting it right now. Once this new reset comes out, then those smart investors that have been holding on to the bulk of their money into something that's not going to change, or that's not going to go ahead and lose its value quite as much, such as the gold and silver, such as the art, such as the commodities, so on and so forth. From there, they're going ahead and going to sell those off and put them into something new as well. It is never, ever, ever, ever staying still. It's never being parked under their mattress. It's never being held in a savings account. It's never being held 100% of the time in just stocks and bonds. It's always constantly flowing. That's why I keep telling you, follow the money, which is what the smart investors do. And because we've got several crises coming up that are happening in a very quick succession, this money is going to be flowing in many different ways. So the commodities market is going to be overblown here very soon, over the course of the next year or so, and it's going to go in massive upward direction, although not all at once. So it's going to be, once again, one of those little roller coaster type things before it hits the final way up curve and moves on from there. And once we get to the top of that, and we got the new dollar rolled in, or the new cryptocurrency, whatever it may be, then it's going to go ahead and be moved into something else. What? I don't know just yet. But I do know that right now, if you are in any of the FANG stocks, if you are into the bond market, if you're into the real estate market, you really, really, really need to go ahead and get out of that. Now, that's for investments, okay? That is not for living. That's not for eating, and so on and so forth. But what you will want to go ahead and do, if you want to do something beyond just preserve your wealth into what I just went ahead and mentioned, then go ahead and get a business into this type of market, because people are always going to need food. People are always going to need some sort of shelter, even if it's not a massive condo on the beach. They're going to need a place to stay. And so if you go ahead and have yourself ready and moving and in that general direction, then you're going to be setting yourself up much better than anybody else that's going, what happened? I don't understand. This should not have happened. If everything was hunky dory, and we had some gas price rises, which again rose over the weekend. But we had a little bit of gas price rises, but we're still able to go ahead and do what we need to go ahead and do. Well, that's no longer the case. It is no longer the case. You are now at a point where you've got a 50-50 shot. And the window is really, literally slamming shut as we speak, okay? And it's either you move right now into something that you know is going to work for you, or you get slammed into your spot where you're at. And if that's the case, then hold on to your belt buckles, because we're in for a wild ride. And this is the hardest thing to do, which is to go ahead and decide for yourself to move forward or to stay where you're at. Most people are going to stay exactly where they're at, which is going to be the worst thing that they possibly can do. It's going to be the worst thing they can possibly do. Why? Because of this very thing. If what they knew got them into this situation, what they know now will not get them any better. It will only get worse and worse and worse. And that is the worst crisis of all, because people have not used their brains. They have not used their knowledge or their experiences to be able to get them further on. They have just decided that there are smarter people out there that they can go ahead and trust. And therefore, they're going to continue to listen to these people that are going, no, no, everything's fine. Everything's hunky dory. You don't have to worry because nothing's going to change. And they're going to, in the meantime, continue to take in as much money as they possibly can to take their fees off of you and move on from there. And I'm telling you right now, literally, you might have a week before this really starts crashing down. You might have at most 6 months. And I doubt seriously it's going to be 6 months. I doubt seriously. Because like I said, right now, watching the downward trend, it's been trending downward. The stock market has been trending downward about 1% per day. There's only 100 days before it goes from top to bottom if it continues in that trend, which is basically 3 months. That's kind of scary in a way to know that you've got maximum 3 months. And of course, like I said, it doesn't happen to where it only goes down little by little. It doesn't sink gently. There is no controlled crash or soft landing. There's no such thing. Every landing is hard. Sometimes it's more comfortable than others, but every landing is hard because you're going ahead and going from a moving object onto an object that does not move. And you're going to have a bounce, and you're going to have a coast, and you're going to have that stop or whatever. Or if you're like trying to land a plane on a Navy a naval aircraft carrier, it's definitely that hard bounce where they slam into the deck, they catch hold of the cable, and the cable just jerks them backward, going from 150 knots or 175 miles an hour to the space of 0 in the course of a football field. That's a huge jerk. And that's not going to bode well for many people. So I want you to realize that there's several crises that are happening right now, and we need to go ahead and get last ditch prepared for it. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for the Tales from the Edge. And welcome back to the show. Tales from the Edge is brought to you by the HRS Foundation, investing in future generations to ensure a better tomorrow. Tales from the Edge is a personal example of people and situations that I've experienced during my path to growing wealthy. And today's story is this, and it fits in so nicely. And you've probably heard this adage for a long time and or a huge amount of time in the past. And that is this adage right here. You can't get insurance during a calamity. You can't get insurance during a calamity. You can only insure it before the fact. And what does insurance do? It does nothing more than preserve what you had or to protect what you have in case it gets damaged. Those are the two things that it does. It goes ahead and actually it mainly does the insurance against any bad things that are happening. Okay. Now, of course, everybody knows you got to have car insurance if you're driving. If you are a boater, you got to have boat insurance. If you have a business, you have to have business insurance. If you are a professional speaker, you have to have insurance on your voice. If you are an actor, you got to have insurance upon whatever the best part of your body is that you go ahead and do. I've known people, Burt Reynolds had insurance on his mustache for the longest time. I've known people that insured their hands, that have insured their faces, that have insured the rest of their body, so that they would, if for whatever reason they were in a bad calamitous type of event and they couldn't do what they did before, such as swimsuit model or anything of that nature, then the insurance would go ahead and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go ahead and get them back to their previous state or as close as possible to it, or to go ahead and help them live for the rest of their lives. That's what insurance is for. But insurance is not necessarily just straight insurance, okay? Because like I said, what you can do is insure yourself from that calamitous thing by just thinking ahead. We know that the Federal Reserve is planning on changing out a paper dollar to a digital dollar of some sort. We know that it's starting in January of 2023. It is here. It's been talked about for years. It's been placed into action 3 years ago. It was set into massive motion a year and a half ago when there was a quote unquote coin shortage, and they stopped sending out as many coins into the economy as was going on, and they started going ahead and bringing it back into their own place so they could go ahead and melt it down and move it onto something else. And finally, they're going to go ahead and move into phase number 3, which is the actual currency part of it, beginning in January. We know this is happening. We know it's been happening. And if you have not done anything to prepare for that event, then you have not been insuring yourself. If you've been doing other things, such as whatever, even if it was something as simple as getting physical gold and silver coins so that you could then have options of some sort, even if it was just a life raft worth of options, then you've been better off than the people who have done absolutely nothing because they don't know any better. The insurance part of it is where you can go ahead and have your safety net, your safety line, your life raft, whatever you want to go ahead and call it, the buoyancy life vest that you need on a boat or a ship. That's what that is. So that way you know that regardless of what happens to everything else around you, then you personally will survive to be able to move on to the next event, whatever the case may be. Now, believe it or not, there is other types of insurance that many people don't realize. For example, people go ahead and insure this market that has been for almost 100 years going straight up. Almost 100 years going straight up. And they've insured themselves by taking a small part of that money. And every once in a while, when they see a recession on the horizon, they'll go ahead and bet against the market with a small portion of it, so that if the market did make a correction or a downturn for a short period of time, those people went ahead and collected the insurance benefits from that particular item. There's many different ways to go ahead and do that. There are many different insurance companies that will help you along with that, and they are legal and they are actually helpful. Lloyd's of London is one of them. Lloyd's of London has been around for over 300 years, almost 400 years now at this particular point here, and they have insured people from stock market downturns. They've insured against certain currencies going out of phase. They've insured people that have bet on one side of the war or the other. They bet on assets such as fine art, such as real estate, such as boats, and so on and so forth. I mean, believe it or not, there was an insurance company, I don't remember if it was Lloyd's or not, but an insurance company back in the 1920s that went ahead and insured the Titanic, but they wouldn't insure, or they wouldn't give an insurance contract to Napoleon Bonaparte when he went ahead and tried to sponsor a revolution against in France. Kind of crazy, but it happens. But you can't do it during the event. You can't do it during the calamity. You can't get flood insurance when your house is being knocked down the hill because of a flood. You can't go ahead and get house insurance against a tree falling on it once the tree is coming down. There's no way. You can't get car insurance after hitting somebody else or being hit by somebody else with a car. It just doesn't happen. In order for you to go ahead and get the insurance to help you safely move to the next event or next area of your life, or arena of your life, if you will, you've got to be able to go ahead and ensure what you have now remains just as as beneficial to you after the event as it has before the event. It's up to you to decide what's most important for you. If you want and or need a place to stay, and you don't want the government telling you you're only in this area for a few hours at a time to sleep, and then you have to vacate that so the next person can come in and sleep in that bed for the next shift that's coming out, then you need to prepare for that. And yes, that's coming, or that is how they want it to come by the year 2030. This is a real scary thing, and it is real, and you can go ahead and research this as well. World Economic Forum is already telling people that you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy about it. This is going to start, in my opinion, I don't know exactly when, but in my opinion, it's going to start sometime around the next year to year and a half. And believe it or not, I believe that this digital currency reset is going to be the start of it, and it's going to go from there. So you need to decide what's best for you. Do you want to have your own place to stay out in the country where nobody can get to you and you can be self-sufficient? Or do you want to go ahead and be in the city where you're going to have to go ahead and sleep in shifts and move on and go from there, and rely on the government to feed you on a daily basis, and rely on the government to be able to ration the gas to you on a daily basis, and so on and so forth? Well, we've seen over the course of history, hundreds of and thousands of years in the making, that governments rarely get it right. Governments rarely get it right. And if they're not going to get it right and they haven't done it right beforehand, I'd rather go ahead and have that decision for myself to tell me if I'm getting it right. And if I can get it right, then I know I'm better off than 90% of the rest of the people that are supported by the government. But the government doesn't like that. Governments will not like that. They never have. They want as much control as they possibly can. Here in the United States, for the last 200 years, we have been an anomaly over governments of the world. We've been an anomaly. The last time this anomaly happened basically was ancient Greece and then ancient Rome. And of course, each of them went exactly the way it should, is that they tipped the scales and they went to either a full democratic party, which then went ahead, in the case of Greece, which then of course went into the biggest bullies controlling everything, and it became a dictatorship, to Rome, where the state had given everything out and it was a complete socialistic nightmare, to where Caesar and his people owned everything and doled everything out little by little by little. And it lasted a long time, but again, it basically fell apart after about 150 years, or a little, I think it was more like 300 years, really when it finally came crashing down. But after about 100 to 150 years, it decided that it went ahead and basically went kaput. The United States came about with something completely different. It was not a democracy. It was not a republic. It actually married the best of both of those worlds into a democratic republic. And so the republic, which was in charge of many of the things, that was where the democracy was happening back and forth. But it was limited to a very small governing body. And the United States flourished for a lot longer than it was supposed to. It was a grand experiment, believe it or not. But it flourished for a lot longer than it was supposed to, and it became this wonderful, wonderful event that led to a great thing. And then, of course, as time went by, certain people thought, hey, you know what? This great thing is wonderful, but I can go ahead and control a lot more by doing this. And then these people over here saw that what was going on, and so they went ahead and tried to grab their piece of the pie, and it just became fractured and fractious, and finally started tipping the scales again, to where basically now the governing body is saying we are democratic. We are democratic. We have to do things in a democratic way so that everybody's got their own voice. But that's not the case. And again, moving on, that democratic process basically went into the biggest bullies in the room trying to box themselves off and grab as much control as possible. And so we are now going in the way of the dictatorship again. And I believe it's going to end up just like Rome did, where it's going to be the biggest bullies that are doling out little tiny pieces as much as possible of the pie, the bigger pieces going towards their friends, the biggest pieces going for the investors and the insurance companies. And we're going to start all over again. And it's going to come crashing down sometime in the next 7 years. That is my opinion. But that seems to be how it's playing out. If you want to go ahead and insure yourself against this calamity, you need to do one of three things. You either need to decide that you're going to be part of the system and get as much as you can in there now, so you have a controlling factor in that new power play. Or you need to go ahead and take what you've got, sell off all the non-essentials, decide to go ahead and start up your own little tiny economy, either by yourself with your family or with a group of like-minded people to do the exact same thing and start up your own new economy and move on from there. Or possibly a little bit of both. Keep dabbling in the one where you can go ahead and work as long as you possibly can while you're doing it and staying outside of the system as much as possible. Those are pretty much your three options. If you don't do any of those, if you become an ostrich with their head in the sand and you try to go ahead and just let things ride out until it's best for you to do whatever you can, which is almost past the point of no return right now, then you're going to be stuck in the calamity, tumbled here and there in whatever is happening, and then you're going to be told what to do because you no longer have an option. Let me repeat that. You're going to be told what to do because you no longer have an option. You've been listening to to Tales from the Edge. When we come back, it's time for... Sorry, you've been listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to go ahead and close out the show with What Would Happen If. That's what happens when I try to rely on my memory. Welcome back to the show. What Would Happen If is brought to you by DJR Enterprises. Great entertainment when you need it. You can telephone 470-554-2134 to get involved in the wonderful opportunity that is your next event, whether it happens to be a speaking engagement or a party of some sort. Today's topic for What Would Happen is wake up. Wake up, people. Even if you don't listen to this channel regularly, even if you know that your friends don't listen to this channel, take what I'm giving to you free of charge and pass it on. Wake up, because events are happening right now that are not in the best interest of the everyday person. They are not interested in making sure that 99.9% of the population of the earth is doing the best it possibly can. It's actually the opposite. The very, very elite, the 1% or 0.1 of 1%, are interested in making sure that they have as much as possible, much control as possible, as much of the assets as possible, as much of the anything that they possibly can get their hands on as possible, to go ahead and control everything else. And people, according to their plan, are going to be happy with this. They're going to own zero because the elite owns everything. Now, I'm, again, not talking about the top 10% of the population. It's not the case. The top 10% of the population of the world right now is great, but they are what's considered the middle class at this moment. And the middle class is getting squeezed out into the other percentage. So the top 1% of what's been happening, the most powerful families in the world, the riches of the world, the people that know what they are doing and have been for hundreds of years and have been following that same basic example, they're the ones that are saying, we want control. Now, this is never a good thing. We also know that from history that the 1% of the world will never control everything. And so they're trying to go ahead and plan out as much as they possibly can so that when there is a rebellion, and there will be, that they can keep the rebellion down as much as possible and can go ahead and keep control over most of what's going on. If you were to take a look at the World Economic Forum right now in black and white, and they've got it on their website, they've got a video of one of these important people. I can't remember what her name is, but she talks about how everybody's going to own nothing, everybody's going to be happiest, and that the one biggest fear, let me rephrase that or say that again, one biggest fear are the people in the country, everybody outside of the city, everybody outside of the major control area that are self-sufficient. The people that know how to build real estate, the people that know how to create great businesses, the people that are out there that are able to go ahead and farm for themselves and their communities, the people that are outside of the system that don't want this control. That's what they are afraid of. And yes, there will be rebellion. It will not be a 50-50 rebellion. I believe, as always, over the course of history, that's shown us that it's basically going to be roughly around 30% or less of the population of what's going on. So you have to wake up. You have to wake up as to what's going on around you, because if you don't, you're going to get sucked into what is happening. And again, it is never, ever, ever the best for the individual. Never. I mean, the United States, like I said, was a grand experiment. It was an anomaly. It actually did work, but it was not supposed to. It was supposed to allow Europe to be able to set itself up to do what was necessary so that the people on the stage could go ahead and control everything, which is how the grand families that were going on split themselves up into this, and they decided to go ahead and take the rebellious, the black-headed stepchildren, or red-headed stepchildren, however you want to go and call them, black sheep of the family. They were kind of pushed to the side and allowed to go ahead and play in the sandbox outside of what was happening. And then they were fighting for control for the rest of Europe, because nowhere else in the world was nearly as evolved as Europe, and moving on from there. And then, whoa, they woke up and realized that, guess what? Now, this red-headed stepchildren had now basically controlled almost everything that they were fighting for without realizing that they had given away their control. Now the families are trying to take this control back. And they've finally gotten to the point where they can go ahead and do so. How? By controlling the money supply. They're controlling the money supply. They've allowed the US dollar to go ahead and come back around to where they can go ahead and garner control of it and move on from there. And this has been happening, like I said, over the course of 200 years. And it basically, I mean, if you think about it in world history, when the United States went ahead and gained independence, and the rest of Europe decided, oh, you know what, we don't have to worry too much about them. They're just this little backwater country that nobody can go ahead and figure out, and we'll go ahead and let them deal what they need to deal with. And we got our own little things that we need to worry about. We got our Napoleonic Wars and our 30-year wars. The Spain's trying to go ahead and come up and be a major player again. And France is trying to come up and be a major player again. And all of a sudden, boom, Germany fled out of nowhere. And again, the barbarians to the north came about and basically tried their bid for controlling the world. Not once, but twice. Now, it might be that they're trying it a third time. I don't know. We're going to have to find out for sure. But they have woken up to the fact of the United States because they let it get out of control, controlled basically the world as we know it, and then is now because of if since the great houses allowed it to go ahead and come about, they finally slowly inserted their way into it and put the World Bank into the system, and they went ahead and started doing things with their special drawing rights, which was the special money for the governments, and they allowed the United States to go ahead and get overblown, not once, not twice, but three times. And the third time, they would not allow the United States to control the deflation again. They've gotten their hands and their money and their system back into place, but 200 years after they wanted it to. It kind of reminds me of the movie Dune, where they set themselves up for the Messiah, and the Messiah arrived one generation too early and was not allowing them to have their control. Well, it's again now back to the point where they are able to go ahead and do whatever they want to. But if we don't wake up right now, our last ditch effort, if we don't take our heads out of the sand and do something for ourselves, something for our families, something for our communities that we know is not working towards the government and eventual control over everybody, then we're going to again be sucked into the system. We're going to have no choice. We're going to have to use this digital dollar in the way that the government decides it wants it to be used. And we're going to be happy to use it because they're going to be telling us, this is what you have, this is what we're paying for. You won't have to worry about any of this at all. And all of your wealth is going to be stolen. You're not going to have a place to live. Therefore, you don't need to have the fine art to be able to hang on the walls. You're going to have food being fed to you. So you're not going to have to worry about going out to the finest restaurants and enjoying these new things that you never knew were available, because it's not going to matter. You're not going to need your business that you have, that you can go ahead and control and be able to make into an empire, if you will, even if it's a dry cleaning service that you've gone ahead and opened up 15 stores and 15 chains for. It's not going to make it matter, because you're going to be told by the government you can only do this much business, plain and simple, period. And if you try to do anything outside of that goes against their will, against their wishes, against their terms, then they're going to go ahead and say, okay, we're shutting you down. And they're going to do it in terms that are legal at that point. They're going to say, they're going to bring the EPA into you if you're a dry cleaning business, and say, oh, you've been using chemicals that are harsh for the system, and we're going to go ahead and shut you down. Whether you or not you have been doesn't matter. If you've been going ahead and getting and using gold and silver or a cryptocurrency outside of the digital dollar or whatever the case may be, and starting next year, they're going to come back in and they're going to say, you are criminals. You are dissenters. You are people that are going against the system, and we're shutting you down, and we're confiscating everything that you've got. And we're throwing you in jail to boot. And unless you comply with the system, then you're not going to be able to do anything, and eventually you're going to be handed the death sentence, pretty much. And whether that's physical or financial, doesn't matter. It's still going to be basically death for you, because you got to go ahead and either start over again or rot in jail the whole time, because you've been branded a criminal and a dissenter and are not part of the system. They're no longer going to, this is my opinion, but this is the way I see it happening. They're not going to anymore just, I don't remember the word, but they're not going to put you outside of the system and let you play somewhere where you're not going to harm anybody else. That's not going to be the case, because they found out that the United States was able to go ahead and do that and become a major world player in doing so. So they're not going to ostracize you. They're not going to go ahead and place you somewhere where you can play on your own and do whatever you want to go ahead and do. No, they're going to go ahead and make sure they keep an eye on you 100% of the time, and or give you some sort of death penalty, whether it's, like I said, a physical death or it's going to be a financial death, one or the other. I'm not sure. But we have to wake up now, because this is our last chance to be able to go ahead and see what is happening and prepare for it. Here's the cool thing. Here's the coolest part about it. If you prepare for an eventuality that never happens, what has happened to you? You've gotten better. You've put yourself in a better position than you were to begin with. And this is where I want you to be. If you're not here, if you're not working for yourself, if you're not able to go ahead and put yourself in a position that makes you better, then the only thing you can do is be controlled by other people. And we are seriously right now in the process of allowing that to happen. You've been listening to Standing on the Edge. Here's a shout out to my friends watching this show today. I have my best friend Lee, who is a great supporter of mine, and thank you very much for doing so. Shannon Newman is watching as well, and thank you very much for doing so. And I appreciate everybody else that is watching after the fact and or while in the middle, but I just don't know about it. My next show, God willing, is going to be next Tuesday, May 24th, again at noon. But until then, I want you to remember to expand your awareness. Think of something every day to help you on your own path. Don't forget to send me a text to 470-554-2134, or you can email me at joinmeattheedge@gmail.com. I can go ahead and get you set up for a partial sponsorship for as little as $1 for this particular show if you wanted to continue. And of course, if you have any other information that was mentioned today, then send me a link or send me a text or an email, and I can go ahead and get you that. In any case, hopefully soon I'll see you joining me on the edge. Have a great week. Have a great day, guys.